First thing, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time to come to our Intro to Cloud Computing course. As you know, this is a brief introductory course, not super long. We do break up the rest of our cloud lessons and platforms into longer portions over the course of time. Our academic schedule is coming out, and we have more courses that are just geared towards individual platforms. Today, we'll be going through 4 different major platforms. Will be Google Cloud platform. You'll have Microsoft Azure. You also have AWS cloud services, and then we will go through DigitalOcean. And I'll be showing those inside my Brave browser here and going through the screen so you can see what some of those consoles look like inside the actual management area instead of just looking at the website itself. So you can get a good understanding of how those things work, and then a slight breakdown. First things first, to really put a foot stop on what the cloud is. I know you see a lot of memes out there. Some of the memes you'll see is that a cloud is just someone else's computer. Those aren't entirely wrong. And I've tried, you can't shoot files into the air and expect them to be in a cloud. There's a proper data transaction flow for that. So it doesn't work that quickly. One of the things that take into consideration is that when you're utilizing a cloud, you're utilizing an organization's space or organization's resource, infrastructure, but you're doing it in the same sense if you were remoting or if you were doing a virtual private network connection. And that goes through different councils or connections of how you get to that cloud. So what that ultimately means is the organizations like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, IBM, DigitalOcean themselves, they are actually saying, hey, here's our data center, and you need to build, but you don't have the money to buy all the servers or have all the solutions that you need to make your dream work or to make your project come true. So you get to use the cloud, and because it's pretty much not there, but you get something from it, and you can't fully touch it, you can see it a little bit. That's why it's called the cloud in a sense. All right, so if you do have any questions, I typically like to kind of go in stride. So I'll look at the chat and we can go from there. Well, we will be starting with our first cloud environment. Okay, so our first cloud environment is Google Cloud Platform. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have actually heard of Google Cloud Platform or taken the time to go and look at the Google Cloud. Google Cloud is actually extremely helpful when it comes to increasing your flexibility, your availability, as well as the ability to provide resources, services, or products to your customers or even for your team or organization. The one biggest issue that I see with Google is that because Google is so massive and they have so many different things going on, it's hard to really know how to start. Good thing I'm showing you. So if we take a look at our Google Cloud environment, one of the things you can see is new customers get $300 free credits when it comes to Google Cloud. We are not Google partners, but it is in my best interest for you who are learning on how you can test some of the services and get around some of the environments to help yourself as well as your organization or your project team to figure out different resources and what is actually best suited for you. Now, we're not going to go through the whole commercial side of this because there's plenty of commercials that you can follow and look at when it comes to operation. I'm going to take you into the management console. So in our management console, you'll see that you have a lot of what we call little tabs here or small boards in our major dashboard. These can be customized so you can focus on what it is that you are viewing. Once you go down that path, you can see some of the stuff that you have is your project info, the different resources that you may be using for this project, for your management, what type of APIs that you're using. And if you're not familiar with the term API, that is application programmable interfaces. So to work with other applications or work with custom built APIs or solutions or services or resources, or even feeds if you're like myself. When it comes to cyber threats or indicators of compromise, you may see that you have different threat feeds that you may want to bring into a certain security function or entity. You also have monitoring. Monitoring actually goes a lot more in depth than you would think. Not just the usage amount when it comes to your resources, but it allows you to actually look at the health status of your systems and your resources inside your environment. You can also put in security monitoring to see if you have any type of unfully safeguarded systems, or at least up to industry standard in accordance with NIST 800-53, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology standards that we have. And if we go past our dashboard, we can come to our little pancake stack here, which is our menu, and we can see that you have a few different options here. You have your marketplace, which will allow you to see what other solutions, kind of rollout solutions you can do, pick out from, instead of having to build everything from scratch. And you have a long list inside this environment. Yes, they do have the Elastic Stack or Elasticsearch. Instead of going through elastic.co and setting up your cloud instance, you can do it directly from Google, which is slightly convenient, or you can just set up a Linux server in Google and build your own Elastic, and kind of, it's open source anyway, so you can kind of just, not pay additional charges. And so we're going to go back to our pancake stack. You can see that you have your billing area. Your billing area, excuse me, your billing area is managed when it comes to your usage. They actually let you know how much you're spending in real time. As you see here, I activated the $300 trial credit, and I didn't use any of it because we do have an organization account that we use. So there's no reason to use this. Just want to show you, but you do have 1 year to use that credit. And this is the counter that you see here, and it lets you know that, which is very important to know, keep track of, especially if you're trying to understand and build out with this environment. They do have a lot of other options here that we won't have the time to go super in depth with, but as you can see, you can do reports on billing, see what type of solutions that you deployed out that are costing more than others, and you can kind of weigh, do a comparison and contrast on which solutions you should keep, which ones are kind of redundant, and which ones are going to best suit the organization when it comes to feasibility. And if you're like myself and you deal with being an architect in most places, you have to look at operational, technical, and financial feasibility. And this is why we're talking about clouds. We have our API services. They'll take you to a dashboard. You can see all the different types of APIs that you have really available at hand. There's a lot more that you can actually work with. You'll have to go to the library, and you can search for all the different types of APIs that you want to bring in. And APIs go anywhere from advertising all the way through security to other, which is extremely helpful. And as you can see here, I'm not going to go super in depth. We still have 3 other platforms to touch on when it comes to our cloud environment. But you also have support cases. Yes, you can submit support tickets. You can work with Google Enterprise. Depending on your membership level and the amount that you're paying, you can get really quick responses, real time, or you can get next day responses. Just to be entirely honest, identity access management is what IAM stands for, and this helps you when it comes to having teammates, other developers, or your organization members, employees, whatever, working in an environment, actually creating those security measures, separation of duties, looking at labeling on different tags, controlling the access controls inside your environment. Really strong and helpful for that. Something I definitely want to touch on when it comes to this environment, because Google, for me personally, I believe they stuck this out. They stuck this out like right out in front of you. You didn't have to dig too hard. And some of the other platforms didn't have this feature. There's the VMware engine, and utilizing vSphere, which is a type 1 hypervisor in a cloud, so that you can have an entire vSphere environment. And they actually make it really easy to utilize VMware solutions in the cloud, which is pretty cool. You just have to enable your API to do so, and you can just merge it, and it's beautiful. Okay, so let's go ahead and go in line. We're going to close that out. Now this brings us to Microsoft Azure. And yes, it's Azure. To be very honest, for the longest time, I used to call it Azure. And it was funny that we had to look it up. A bunch of my guys were talking about it, like, what is the actual pronunciation? And it's Azure. So that, helped us from looking at each other weird. Microsoft Azure works in these what they call workspaces, and if you create a free account, this free account actually allows you to have free access to all of their services for about 90 days roughly, but then you get 12 months of free services after that, but they are only the free services. So don't let the buzzwords confuse you. You will get access to the free services. And as you see here, you say they're always free, 25 plus services. Yeah, they're typically not the most critical services that you want to use for free, but you do get the $200 credit. You also get the 30 days. The $200 credit actually goes a long way. That's why I say 90 days, because you can start your free service for 30 days and then use a $200 credit on something like a a virtual machine instance. That's when you set up, a desktop or server. Servers use a lot more credit than desktops, but if you're using Linux, you won't have a problem going to a desktop or a client-side system. And then it'll show you all the free month services that you have here as well. So working with different machines, looking at all these different products, SQL database, they give you certain standards. For instance, you can only use up to 250 gigs. 256 is accurate side if you're looking at going through your iterations of growth when it comes to storage and when it comes to bits. But SQL database, you can only use up to 250 gigs. File storage, 5 gigs. Blob storage, 5 gigs. They should also have, manage disk storage. There's also a table and queued. You have Azure Cosmos database. You have your bandwidth transfer, which means outbound. You can't transfer more than 15 gigs outbound throughout a certain amount of time because they do charge for that service. And a number of transactions when it comes to your artificial intelligence and machine learning. And when you log in, you have to log in through the portal side. Now, here's one thing that Azure has a little bit better than some of the other platforms. And when I mean by some other platforms, I would say Google and about Google. So Google, it's the learning paths. They actually set you up pretty well with some free learning in here. And so this is the reason why we do the cloud, intro to cloud computing, and let people get their free learning on and show them where they can go to get additional information. But you go through this, you can actually start understanding services a little bit more in depth. You understand how to set up different architecture, how to get into your workspaces, how to segment off your workspaces from others, creating entire environments that you have segmented off to different people, geographic locations, organizations, and as well as, really just about anything that you can divide it into. And when it comes to Microsoft Azure, it's typically a more fluid transfer. And the reason it's more fluid when it comes to just your operational tempo is because that most enterprise environments work off of a server client environment that is usually controlled by Microsoft servers. And so because you have that, it makes it very easy to use something like AD or Active Directory Connect or Azure Domain Services to bridge those connections. So syncing up is mandatory, syncing back is not. So it's like the reverse of taking a flight, taking off is optional, landing isn't. That's a military joke. It's all right. So I'm a vet. All right. So as you go through those things, it's what you have there. They do have a lot of documentation here as well to help you get ready to get certified, do a lot of hands-on application. And then when you're ready to go to like some higher Azure stuff, you can contact us. All right. Next, we're going to go into AWS. And the reason we're going to go to AWS is because it's one of those huge buzzes. They have an infinite amount of services, it feels like. And I'll show you what I mean. So we're showing you, this is your management console. And in this management console, you'll see that you have a couple of different solutions straight out the gate. Build a solution with simple wizards. Yes, they do have start wizards, kind of like when you deploy the application inside your environment, like if you went to your desktop, if you're using Windows or Mac. If you're Linux, everyone knows we don't use the quick button. We actually use the command line. Go ahead and // that thing, make it work. So Launching a virtual machine. If you're using virtual machines or VMs, this is typically where the first thing that you think of is your EC2 instance environment. It's actually not really hard, and I'm going to go through it a little bit. Okay, so when you start an EC2 instance, which is just creating a virtual machine, that's exactly what you're doing, what you're creating in the cloud. When you start your EC2 instance, you'll present you with some quick start items, or ISOs, I should say, also known as images, that should allow you to know what you're getting, kind of understand and work with. So you'll see here, you have Amazon's Linux, you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is something hopefully some of you are familiar with. If you're not, that's okay, but they do have a developers portal that you can become familiar with Red Hat Linux, and also get a free developers license. So it's licensed and you can pull down directly from the repository. So it's definitely a good help for you. All right, then you have your SUSE Linux Enterprise, you have Ubuntu. We'll see a couple other things like Windows Server 2019, Base. You'll have to build up on top of that. You also have deep learning AMIs with Ubuntu. As you see here, it comes with NVIDIA supporters. You also have NVIDIA Docker information here. So if you're trying to build a certain system, i.e., let's say you're working with cryptocurrency, but you don't have enough GPU power, you're not going to get a whole lot of glorious mining power out of Amazon unless you pay a lot for it, and then the cost may not balance out. But what I will say is that if you are working just on blockchain technology and you need a lot more computing kind of rapidly to test some kind of operation or security or secure communication, or if you're working with different exchange of keys in an environment, it's good for a quick spin up to do your testing. Typically, I know that when I build Docker containers, I build them up in pieces to test different portions. And if I need a tremendous amount of increase, I mean, not anymore because we have, fields of servers now in SekureNation. But when I first started, I would use the cloud to bring my Frankenstein, or the monster, excuse me, to life. Frankenstein was a doctor. All right. We also have a Server 2019 additional instances here. So you'll see you have SQL Server here. You'll see you have with containers, most likely Vagrant in most cases. Then you have CoreBox, and you'll see a long list of additional resources you have there. And this is their quick start items. And so you also have the marketplace, excuse me, where you can use other systems and support features to bring into this environment. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the quick start, because I'm just going to go through. So we're going to go over Red Hat Linux, because why not? Now, once you go into this, especially if you're using an EC2 instance, which is the most common usage of AWS, is the reason why I'm showing you this, is because you can choose what type of family it's going to fall into. And so they have this big matrix that they use to identify the type of families. And you can look at all the different families, and typically once you start going down to letters, you'll see there's a correlation between your alpha and numeric characters. And once you get to like G or M or F, typically they're more expensive per hour or per minute or per month, depending on your package, unless you do a blanket purchase, which you paid out for the year, which they do give you a discount for if you do that. But you can see there's a lot of different resources. So if we take a look at just the T2, you see here, I'll say, okay, the type of this instance, this is a free tier. So if you want to use a free account, you can use this, but you get one core CPU, which is kind of weird, as you see there. So there's one CPU, but they also talk about cores. You get 1 gig of memory, and it works with elastic block storage only, which means you're not working with EFS. EBS is a little bit more mind-numbing sometimes if you don't know how to properly set up your buckets inside your environment. But also you can use S3 buckets just to offload your storage and not having to keep on VM storage. If I'm speaking Greek, it's okay. When I first started learning about this, it was super ancient Greek. All right. And I mean like mythology, not like the actual current language or language over the last 100 decades, yeah, whatever. So We have IPv6 support, and if we decide to go up this family, so let's take a look at G3, then we can start seeing a little bit more serious hardware for our involvement. So we can see that we have 32 cores on this server. We have 244 gigs of memory on a server. It's still EBS only, but you do have a throughput, or you can have a throughput, so you're not bottlenecked, of 10 gigabits when it comes to your network performance. It is EBS optimized, or optimization is available, which means you can offload to your S3 buckets, you can offload to other systems as well, and it'll help keep the maximum data computation high, so you're not getting lags or have you transactions. And we can go higher. And as we start seeing the M's, M5s, 96 cores, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it, which means they have multiple systems that are working with your instance. Not bad if you're trying to set something up that's going to be monstrous and amazing at the same time. But you have 384 gigs of memory. And as you see, you have 25 gigs of your network performance and throughput. That's pretty solid. It's pretty fast. So when you take those different things into consideration, that's how that works. Now, let's go ahead and cancel all this, and let's go back to our dashboard and take a look at a couple other things. And trust me, you can be on that list all day. You will see some ridiculously high Ec2 instances, and they're not lying. It can be set up in 2 to 3 minutes, which means you build it out. Depending on the resources that you demand, it could take a little longer for the full build out and for you to be presented with your management console for that server. All right. Now they do have, as you see here, a web app environment to build as your Elastic Beanstalk. You have using virtual servers as your Lightsail. You have Route 13 when it comes to registering your, or 53, which comes to registering your domain. And if you're wondering what 53 stands for, 53 is actually the protocol port number for DNS. DNS is domain name server or domain name service. FYI, a little gee-whiz knowledge for you. We also have IoT work. So if you're in that environment and you're building IoT stuff, let's say you have some Raspberry Pis, or if you're historical like myself and have a chip, which was the world's first $9 computer, or you have a couple other things like Arduinos, stuff like that you want to wire in there, you can. And then we have to build, you can look at websites, storage. Storage is really important. Storage is not really second. I would say it's almost parallel with the EC2 instance. And when it comes to storage, the most common storage items you should be looking at, that is very important, will be Glacier and S3. And what I mean by S3 is looking at S3 buckets. So let's go ahead and take a look at all the services here. And before I dive into the S3 bucket side of this, I know I'm moving 1 million miles a minute, but we only have an hour. So you'll see a lot of services. You have computing or computation. So this goes through how you set up your servers versus your normal instances versus instances for small form factors like we talked about, IoT. You have your developer tools or your DevOps world, as we see here when it comes to coding, development, transferring code, deploying code, testing code, doing fuzz testing on applications or things that you've built out. Fuzzing means throwing random data information at the system to see if you have any faults or errors or crashes. This is very important. Machine Candyland right here, or the world of Willy Wonka, I like to call it, is where you're taking machine learning to new heights, which is pretty awesome in a sense. Definitely takes a lot of dedication and time if you're going down to machine learning and using AI as well. If you're wondering, jump on conacademy.org and get your math up, because mathematics is important. They didn't lie to you in school. And the things that you didn't think you would have to use in real life, you do if you go down this path. All right, you have your cost management, which, it's about money. And then we have our front end, web and mobile, containerization, using Elastic, customer enablement, working with your different customers, working with AWS themselves. It comes to building different things out. Storage, S3, EFS, FSX S3 Glacier, which is long-term S3, is kind of like the middle ground. As you know, this is the Glacier side, and Glacier is for long-term cold storage. S3 is mostly like warm for the most part, and then EFS and working at that is more hot. Then you have your AWS backups. Then you have more database structures that they have, and as you can see, the list goes on and on and on and on. Now, that's what actually becomes the downfall of AWS. The downfall is that you typically have so many solutions, and it becomes a little cumbersome that most people, at least some of our clients that are not in the educational side of SekureNation, are clients that are wondering when they go after AWS. And that's why it's easier for Microsoft Azure to take that lead because it's almost like a direct correlation with the current environment already. But do not let that stop you from exploring AWS, because AWS is powerful beyond measure. All right. And yeah, so we're going to touch on one of my favorites. This is my favorite, and I'm actually going to bring up one component really quick. Like, let's do this for now. Can everyone see my DigitalOcean screen? So to make sure, just need one yes for control. Thank you. Appreciate the yes. Okay, if you are interested in DevOps and you are also interested in creating your custom solutions and you want to not have a big bill, DigitalOcean is an amazing place for that. Now, it does have amazing positives, crazy amazing positives, but it also does have some negatives. And so what I mean by that is, as you see here, this is, they tell you right now, welcome to the developer cloud. And yes, this is the developer cloud. This is the cloud where you will start building out a lot of your different systems. You get to not only think about using Kubernetes, but actually use it with a lot of documentation and support, which is also really cool. And dealing with Docker, dealing with Kubernetes, Vagrant, going through BSD jails, looking at different containerizations, LXC, going through all these different portions. And there are a lot of different things that you can like fully build out and I mean, just develop. So if you have your own blog system that you want to set up, you can do that. But as you see here, designed for developers, they're not lying. This is not a joke. They definitely designed this for developers. And they also have built for business. So if you are, let's say, a professional developer freelancer, and you wanted to create different systems and build different things out for your clients or yourself, you do have the ability to do it like on a very ridiculously cheap budget, and then transfer this over to a client, package it up in a nice OVA or something that's readable, convertible over to VMware, or doing an OVA converter over to something like VirtualBox. I'm not sure who's going to pay somebody to build something and put it in VirtualBox, but it is a possibility. That option is there. And then you also have KVM solutions, and you can also have it transfer over to different cloud providers like GCP, Azure, and AWS. This is why I love DigitalOcean. As you see, they don't have as many data centers as Azure and AWS, because they're titans in a globe. But it's been a common conversational piece that pretty much DigitalOcean is just waiting for one of them to drop the ball on the developers for the rest of the world to really dive into DigitalOcean even more. Okay, so now that we've looked at this area, let's look at the console area. This is your console. And just like you saw with the Google when I first started, one of the things that we saw was that you had the ability to go through all your tasks. You had to look at all the different options that you had. You had billing, you have all these different things that allowed you to track and move and shift and build and integrate. But here's the simplicity of DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean allows you to have your project. As you can see, you have all these things here on your immediate dashboard. You have cost right there, how much you are spending so far, or your average spending, which is really good because as you're looking at your project and you're checking activity, You're looking at your settings, you see where everything is going on. You can see that how much you're spending and what you're doing, what kind of usage you have, and where those spendings or those calls come in and correlate with your utilization, which is great, really important. Now, how is this built out and how is this done? Okay, well, we can either go to getting started with a droplet, or we can go to this video here and even go to our marketplace. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the droplet first. So if we go to create a droplet, it's definitely very all-in-one type solution. So you'll see here, Ubuntu, FreeBSD, Fedora, Debian, and CentOS. What does that tell you? Does anything like this seem familiar? Yeah, you pretty much have Linux and Unix, DevOps. Pretty much that's what you have. So you have Linux and Unix pretty much all in an area, and then you have your plans. So they start you off with very clear and concise plans and planning for how you're going to use your system and how much you're going to pay. So they have their basic plan, which is, as you see here, you can do a $5 a month plan. The resources aren't ridiculously high, but if you're not doing anything super extensive or that requires a lot of heavy lifting from a system, you're just building out, this is an affordable way to start doing your DevOps or just messing around with testing. You also have 10, 15, 20, 40, 80, and most cases, as long as you're not using all those resources, you're actually not spending that. It's not a flat rate, but they put you in this environment where you've seen people that needed these type of resources. That was your average for usage. It's about $40 a month. It could be a lot less. You have your general purpose, as you see here, where numbers tend to flex a little bit, excuse me, which will let you know that you can change your schedule when it comes to how you're utilizing this, or change the amount of resources you have or need for your system. You can actually compartmentalize or contain your instance that you had in the beginning and go ahead and move it up to a new plan. You have general purpose, which means for everything. You can see there's kind of a decent balance between your CPUs and memory and your solid state disk environment. You see here, you have your CPU optimization, memory optimization, as we see here, and storage optimization. Now, the reason it's beautiful for the start is because build something amazing and then start paying for other things that are expensive. That's the way I look at it. All right, you also have block storage. Block storage allows you to add specific volumes, and you can control how much block storage you want to have. And what they do is they'll isolate another set of block storage, and you can mount it, automatically mount it, or you can do a manual format on your own if you want to mount it to a certain area. You can also bridge a connection through AWS if you want to do an S3 bucket. You can bridge a transfer through that. You just have to use your file transfer as well as VNC, which is really important if you do a VNC solution or from your AWS to DigitalOcean if you want to transfer that stuff over. But totally up to you if you want to do so. Remove volume. All right. You'll see these are the major regions that they have. So when it comes to East Coast, you have 1 and 2. Right now, they have restrictions on overcapacity, using overcapacity with their environment servers. So you don't have to worry about just constantly being flooded and losing resources because that data center is constantly bringing in different people. You have San Francisco, London, Frankfurt, Germany. You have Singapore, Toronto, Bangalore, and Amsterdam. Now, there's a lot of additional resources, and just like AWS, the reason I'm coming here is to let you know that AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft, Azure, and DigitalOcean allow you to either do pre-shared key or let's say shared key or password, or you can do SSH keys and generate your SSH keys. And so you can do new SSH keys where they can let you actually do open up a terminal and run your SSH key gen. You can do this with AWS instead of doing that. It's a lot more secure to have a private key and your public key and use those keys instead of it is for just username and password. And also, if you can attach multi-factor authentication, like a separate type of authentication outside of your keys and or passwords, to do so, it will help you out in the long run so you're not getting things hijacked. We'll stick with the password here. And then once you put in your password, seems legit. All right, there we go. And what we'll do is then you can go ahead and add your droplet. You can name your droplet for a class. And you can choose to have multiple droplets that you need built out at the very same time. As you can see, I already created for class 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pretty cool, huh? At least I hope it is. I thought it was cool. So you can add different tags, and then as you go through, you can select what project to have this attached to. And worst case scenario, if you don't want to do any of this stuff, you can go to the container distributions. So you can set up different containers, or you go to the marketplace, which is everyone's favorite place to go if they do not have an idea on what they're doing first. So the beauty of the marketplace, and the reason I'm doing this marketplace and I didn't do the marketplace for Google Cloud Platform and AWS and Microsoft Azure, is because they all are very similar. Very similar. One of the things that are just different is that with some of the items in DigitalOcean and Microsoft Azure, they do a little bit more pre-provisioning for you so that you're not having to do a lot of the legwork on an install. They actually build out a lot of things by default for you and just kind of build that instance or that image for you so you can start filling in the blanks and then you can harden it down for your usage organization. AWS does that to a certain extent with limited images because they have a lot of stuff. But as you see here, if you wanted to just set up a Docker droplet, which means you'll have a system like Ubuntu 20.04 that has Docker fully installed on it. Typically, it comes with Docker Compose. You have Docker, just normal Docker containers. You have Docker, Docker Compose. You will probably also have your Docker Swarm functionality on here for those who know what containerization is, what I'm maybe talking about. And then you also have things like Minecraft servers that you can set up. You also have OpenVPN servers that are in here somewhere. You also have LAMP servers. So you can say you built a stack in less than 10 minutes, which you could probably do manually in less than 10 minutes as well. You also have a lot of different solutions here in this environment as well that can help you out and help you develop and build. And if you didn't want to do it in that, you can create a new project for a class. Description. Just because. Class project. Seems legit. There we go. I can skip this from now if you wanted to add some existing instances, like if you had some servers, stuff that you want to move over to that area, you could. And now you have a separate project. This is how you divide them up. So the reason I like this one and I like AWS upfront a little bit more than Amazon and Google is because if you were a beginner, which we all started off as a beginner in the first place, is a little bit more welcoming. And their documentation when it comes to, oh, here we go. Their documentation when it comes to DigitalOcean is really, really well. Now, that doesn't mean that AWS, Azure, GCP do not. Google actually has really good documentation. So does Azure, and so does Amazon Web Services or AWS. Each of these cloud platforms have a significant level of free resources for training as well. And so if you were to go to and try to become a AWS cloud practitioner, you actually could get all the training for that for free and then take the exam. And the exam is only $100. So you can do that. Same thing goes with the entry level for Azure, and the same thing for, well, Google's I think is 150. The same thing for Google for the most part. And DigitalOcean is for DevOps engineers, upcoming DevOps engineers. There are people, so you don't have a whole lot of certifications in there. This is all about the power of curiosity. And so that convenes my lecture portion of it, and I'll take some questions. And let's see, we have one in here. Hello, I missed this looks like a personal question. Is there a way for me to watch the previous? Yes, I actually am recording this session. So if you missed the beginning of it, I am going to put this recording inside of our YouTube channel, which is SekureNation on YouTube, so you can review it and watch it again if need be. Any other questions? You're very welcome, J-Rex. So what kind of services and systems does someone deploy with these services? You're welcome. For everyone that's saying thank you. So, I mean, really, when you think about the type of services that you would use in a cloud, you think about what you use on-prem or what you would like to use on premises that can increase your production, maybe increase security, availability, creating business continuity, disaster response or disaster recovery plans, expanding to your global remote, especially in this time frame, your remote users, everything else is out there. If you wanted to, let's say, bring on some vendors or contractors, but you didn't want to have to do a strong onboarding process, and we'll talk about like Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, you create an environment for your temps, remote workers, contractors, vendors, or temporary project partners in a cloud, and then only have the resources and items that are needed that they would otherwise use in your company in the cloud. And you can choose what to sync up, what to save, what to keep, and then what to just blow away when that project's done. You also have the ability to rapidly expand your capabilities as well. And so it's a using a cloud is giving you the ability to not have enterprise servers. I mean, like we have tons of servers in all of our offices that cost a lot of money. Like one network security manager or one NOS, it costs you, enterprise NOS costs you about 20 grand. Some of them all go up to 50 grand. I don't look higher than that. I have no reason to look higher than that. But you look at all those, but you can use now someone else's system to do so. And that's where a lot of the help and the flexibility come into play. All right, so there's another question here. Make sure I don't miss it. Do you recommend building your own models and APIs versus using Azure, AWS, and Google's APIs? That's actually a good question. One of the things I would say about your application programmable interfaces and how they're going to be utilized. If you can find an API in Google, AWS, Azure, or DigitalOcean that suits your need and is decently secure, that actually works properly, that doesn't have a lot of crashes or errors. If your error rate, you should definitely use kind of an error rate chart, and so you can plot it out, map it. But if your error rate is low with one of their solutions, I would say you should spend more time on your API and maybe still build your API, but more in a leisurely manner. That way, if it just becomes a little bit more cumbersome to use theirs and it's not working out the way you want, at least you know how theirs work and you can build yours better, and that gives you a solid baseline. And you don't use up a lot of time. You can keep pushing forward with your application or your project. All right, what do you think of own cloud? Well, the way I look at it like this, if you're going to go with own cloud, your guess is as good as mine. I don't BS a lot of people. I haven't dived into own cloud. I'm not sure what that service is. Now, if you're talking about building your own cloud, yeah, I've definitely done that. We have our own clouds that we've built. But I would say ultimately, there's only a few other cloud services that I made myself familiar with outside of these four dominant ones, but own cloud's not one of them. So I'm not going to pretend and make myself look stupid by trying to explain something I don't know about. I'm an honest instructor. I'll tell you if I do or do not know about it. So the cloud you feel is more secure than a secure server. I don't remember necessarily saying more secure. I would say that if you were to employ support services for security inside the cloud environment, which means you pay for those services, you may have more eyes on the systems in a cloud than you would on premises if, let's say, if you didn't have enough manning, or if you didn't have an organization that ran 24-hour monitoring, or if you had people that were on call, but the on-call checklist, framework, and a model is not proceeding, it has not been tested fully. When it comes to security, the cloud has its own strong vulnerabilities as well. The cloud's susceptible to a lot of different things because there's also computers, and so there is an element of trust that you have to have there, and you're transferring a lot of your operations into the trust realm of another organization. So there is a give and take when it comes to the cloud and your on-prem, and so typically that is a balance that you have to weigh. You have to look at very important balance you have to identify and weigh. But so really, when it comes to the security versus both, it's all about posturing, setup, and keeping that continuity of security going forward and constantly modding. You're welcome, Joel. SRS and App Idea, a small business, customized manufacturing, engineering, finance, ERP database system. Okay, so you're talking about enterprise. So when you're talking about ERP or enterprise systems, I guess I don't understand the question. App Idea, colon, a small business, customized manufacturing, engineering, finance, database system. If that's an idea that you have, go for it. The world needs new stuff. Like, I would never tell someone who has an idea you have an idea, go for it, because the people who would tell you that it doesn't make sense, or you know what, someone else has that, or that's not smart, or that's stupid, why are you doing that? There's already a couple different things, are the people that will be the same people that look at you and be like, man, where did you come up with that idea? Oh my God, you can make so much money. Can I get a loan? So like, don't let someone stifle your growth or your creativity. And that's just, what I have for everyone there. Like, don't let that happen, because people truly will just tell you whatever they feel, but they won't put in the time and work to do so. How secure is the ocean? Well, if sharks are guarding it, and then you have, man of war, jellyfish, I feel like it's pretty secure. As far as DigitalOcean, DigitalOcean actually, when it comes to security, on the data center side, I couldn't tell you, I've never toured their data center, but as far as the user side and developer side, they allow for multi-factor authentication. You actually go up to 3 types of factors of authentication just to get to your portal. What I mean by like your management console, which I showed you. When it comes to your servers, you can do VNC setups. You can do VPN tunnels to your systems. You can have SSH keys. You can have your passwords and your username and passwords in addition to SSH keys. You can do private IPv6 address, which is great because IPv6 is so vast that you can go through security through obscurity as well. You can also do access management, access controls to isolate who can use those. And if you were using something like a Duo or RSA or any other token or a secondary system for authentication, you can isolate it based off policy off of your IP address or geographical location for logging into. So you can stop other geographic locations from getting to that as well, and really isolate it to that environment. Yes, they do provide end-to-end encryption as well. And worst case scenario, you can have it pipeline through another service to do so. And that's where a lot of the virtual communications or the VPC and your VNC and VPN technologies work with. So hopefully I answered that question. Does cloud technology work with robotics? I was curious and interested about how it would work with droids, excuse me, drones, Mandalorian. Anyway, drones, industrial automation, and self-driving cars. Okay, so if you're looking at robotics, one thing I can tell you just off of the STEM programs that we've used these for, and some of the drones that I created that aren't actually like quad drones, stuff like that, I actually use something else. It's been over 11 years in the Air Force, and things that had propellers going up weren't my favorite items. But what I would say is you can create repositories using the cloud that will have an API and a RESTful API to help wait for a sync between your robotics, your drones. So if you're working with something like Arduinos, or you're working with drones themselves, or different robotic systems, or IoT systems, you can have a user agent or a system agent on your systems that reach out to the cloud and pull that information, do the sync, and even provide code and execution, just like you would if you had cloud managed network devices in your environment. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot I can tell you that is either conflict of interest and or my own personal stuff. So as to security, what about business services like the purported? I guess when it comes to as to security and business services, maybe a little bit more clarity on that question. Let me answer my question. It's like, oh, it just needs cyborg chip. Okay. Business security, they have a lot of different security resources that you have. And as you can sync up, you can sync back. If you think about site-to-site VPNs where you can have resources get, one office, one organization can communicate with the other one through a site-to-site VPN, the same thing can happen with the cloud when it comes to having, let's say, agents or clients or nodes inside an environment or organization that send all their signatures to your SIM or an IDS or IPS in the cloud, the actual server itself, but is monitoring specific networks or endpoints or DNS zones or different network segmentations. There's a lot of different things you can use where you don't have to have a dedicated server on-prem. If you don't want to do that, you can have it in the cloud. The same thing that goes for data loss prevention and just keeping just about every piece of the CIA model well intact for your organization. Now, you do have to look at cost because it can be cheap and then it can get really expensive depending on how many checkboxes you're working with. All right, does any of these systems provide end-to-end encryption? Yes, I think I answered that. AWS, Google, and Azure have a well set up encryption. DigitalOcean, when it comes to end-to-end encryption, if you don't use a third party, it just takes a little bit more work and testing to make sure you have that going. But the reason for that is because it's DevOps. So I don't really blame them for making you do more work to develop something. It's DevOps cloud. All right. Okay, I'm happy I answered your question. Also, you can encrypt data using VPNs. Yes, that is very true. And is setting up a NOS drive like having your own cloud? How you reach it, how it's secured, the placement and everything, yeah. I mean, so if you think about what a NOS is, so a NOS is network attached storage, which means you have a server or you have a NOS device like from Synology or something, and you have certain drives. If you make that really available and is attached to a public facing IP address, and hopefully you have a gatekeeper or you have a proxy or you have something in between in that area, and it's not in your actual network, it's in more of a DMZ environment. You have multi-factor authentication, you also have firewalls, and you change it away from a common port to something that is very unique to you. I just listed out a bunch of security parameters to go with it. But it is absolutely important to know and to understand that a NOS can be your cloud, as well as web application servers can be your cloud. as well as having your a radius server or using Kerberos to authenticate you. Obviously, it's a ticket granting system, authentication system that has a bunch of servers around it to be the gatekeeper as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do to create your own cloud space. And it's essentially not that hard. But if you had multiple NOSes and that you put them in a SAN environment, which is storage area network, which you just turn that to one piece, you want to have a controller, you want to have good accountability. You also want to make sure that you understand what you're doing. But yes, that's a cloud. That is what you're creating is a cloud, and the capabilities that you have in an environment, your ability to use that or share it with others or create access to it, you have created a cloud. Good question. All good questions. Well, without further ado, that is our time. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Happy that you enjoyed the presentation. Like I said, I only answer questions that I know answers to, because no one likes getting a workaround. But like I said, if you're looking for this replay, they'll be on YouTube. All of you are very welcome. Thank you for turning out. Hopefully you start your venture in the cloud. There's a lot of resources there, or even building your own clouds. It'll be pretty awesome. So if you wanted to reach out, you can SekureNation's website, Secure with a K, and I'll also put this email in here for those who want to reach out to our organization and communication team. They have the best way of getting on my nerves enough to make sure I pay attention to everything. There's the email there in the chat. So there you go. Okay, yeah, I can do that too. Stand by. I'll put my social media stuff in there. And I'll put the YouTube link in there. But we do have a Instagram where we do IGTV. So we do some IGTV, quick, how-tos here and there. And then I also like to turn on the music and just do some DevOps stuff and just dance a little bit to myself. I don't mean like dance. I don't know, a dancer. I mean like just kind of shaking my head, listening to music while I'm working. So that first handle is Instagram. If you're looking for me on LinkedIn, it's Ron Shep, founder of SekureNation. YouTube, let me go ahead and give you the YouTube channel. The boots. Okay. Sorry, I for the longest time, I wasn't a big. I'm still not a big social media person. So I've always, security dominant. So I just don't. I typically fumble around I fumble around the social media stuff. So bear with me. I let the social media person. So that's the YouTube channel link right there. That'll take you to one of the videos. This was just one of my cyber advice videos, but you can subscribe from there. And then I do have a TikTok that is we just created it, so nothing special. For education side, not security, but that will be at Cyber Shogun, which is my TikTok. And then Twitter is the same thing as the Instagram that I put in here first. And let me bring up my LinkedIn for you guys. there's that. It's LinkedIn. Everything else, like I don't know, we have a Facebook, but I really don't do Facebook. So it's more of a SekureNation page, not my page at all. But yeah, so just so uploading these. So every time I do a free workshop or something like that, I will be uploading it to a YouTube channel and uploading it to Instagram. And yeah. Yes, so the Security Plus training did pass already so that was our last Security Plus training course of the year. We do have some starting up the beginning of next year, the first quarter. And then we also have a Red Team course, which is 24-week training boot camp for Red Team, starting in the beginning of the year. Pretty awesome course. The reason it's 24 weeks, 3 days a week, is because it's real world training. So we're going through scripting, we're going through CTS, we're going through bug bounty hunting. We're doing a lot of training. And so then we also have our blue team, which is later 2021. We have a lot of other courses that are going through. So little workshops and courses that happen throughout the year as well. Well, we're going to officially end the recording now. Stay cyber safe, stay cyber strong.